crazy wife. Nick Dunn wakes up on the morning of his 5th wedding anniversary expecting an ordinary day. Instead, he walks into a nightmare. His living room is in complete disarray, furniture overturned, shattered glass scattered across the floor, and his wife, Amy, has vanished without leaving a trace. As the police begin investigating, every new piece of evidence seems to point directly at him. Strange financial records appear under his name, neighbors describe the couple's troubled marriage, and Amy's personal diary paints the picture of a loving wife trapped with an increasingly violent husband. The media quickly transforms the case into a national obsession, turning Nick into the most hated man in America. His awkward television interviews and emotionless behavior only make him look more guilty. Even the smallest mistake becomes another reason for the public to believe he murdered his own wife. But halfway through the story, everything changes. Amy is alive. She never disappeared by accident. She carefully planned every detail months in advance, creating fake diary entries, planting evidence throughout the house, covering the kitchen with her own blood, and manipulating every clue so the investigation would end with Nick on death row. She wanted the world to see herself as the perfect victim and her husband as a cold-blooded killer. When her original escape plan falls apart, Amy improvises by seeking refuge with an obsessed ex-boyfriend who believes every lie she tells. Then she murders him, stages the crime as an act of self-defense, and returns home covered in blood as the miraculous survivor of a kidnapping. The country instantly embraces her story. Nick knows the truth, but every piece of evidence supports Amy's version instead of his. In the final blow, she secretly uses his frozen sperm to become pregnant, ensuring he can never leave without looking like the monster who abandoned his wife and unborn child. Amy doesn't simply escape justice. She rewrites reality itself, trapping Nick in a prison built entirely from lies. Fake kid. After losing a baby during pregnancy, Kate and John Coleman struggle to hold their family together. Hoping for a fresh start, they visit a local orphanage and meet Esther, a quiet, intelligent 9-year-old girl who immediately seems different from the other children. She dresses in old-fashioned clothes, speaks with unusual maturity, and creates elegant paintings far beyond what anyone expects from a child. She appears polite, calm, and almost perfect, convincing the Colemans that she's exactly what their broken family needs. But not long after Esther moves in, disturbing incidents begin piling up. A girl at school is seriously injured after confronting her. Strange accidents nearly kill Kate's son Daniel, and anyone who questions Esther seems to disappear under mysterious circumstances. Kate becomes increasingly convinced that their adopted daughter is hiding something terrifying, yet every attempt to expose her only pushes the rest of the family further away. Esther always has an explanation, always cries at the right moment, and always manages to make Kate look unstable and paranoid. Even John starts believing that grief has destroyed his wife's judgment. As the tension grows, Esther's behavior becomes even more disturbing. She develops an unhealthy obsession with John, imitates adult women, and begins acting less like a child and more like someone desperately trying to become part of his life in a very different way. Kate eventually contacts the orphanage, only to discover that Esther's records don't exist. The shocking truth comes from a psychiatric hospital in Estonia. Esther isn't a little girl at all. Her real name is Lena Klammer, a 33-year-old woman with a rare hormonal disorder that permanently gives her the appearance of a child. For years, she has infiltrated vulnerable families by pretending to be an orphan, murdering anyone who stands between her and the father she becomes obsessed with. When John rejects her advances, Lena abandons every disguise and reveals her true, violent nature. The terrified family is forced into a desperate fight for survival, ending with Kate finally stopping the woman who had fooled everyone by hiding behind the face of an innocent child. The prisoner. Dae-soo is an ordinary family man whose life changes forever after one drunken night. On his young daughter's birthday, he is arrested for causing a disturbance, only to disappear moments after being released from the police station. There are no witnesses, no ransom demands, and no explanation. When he wakes up, he finds himself trapped inside a strange room furnished like a cheap motel. The doors never open, the windows are fake, and the only connection to the outside world is an old television. Days turn into months, and months become years. Through the TV, Dae-soo learns that his wife has been murdered and that he has become the prime suspect. With no way to defend himself and no idea why he was imprisoned, he spends 15 years alone, training his body, digging through the wall with his bare hands, and preparing for the day he finally escapes. But just as he's about to break free, he is suddenly released without warning. Left in the middle of the city with money, clean clothes, and a cell phone, Dae-soo begins searching for the person responsible. During his investigation, he meets Mi-do, a kind young chef who takes him in and helps him rebuild his shattered life. As they grow closer, their relationship slowly becomes romantic, giving Dae-soo hope that he can finally move on. But every step of his journey has been carefully planned by the mysterious man watching him from the shadows. When Dae-soo finally confronts his captor, the horrifying truth is revealed. Years earlier, he spread a rumor that destroyed the life of a wealthy classmate named Lee Woo-jin. Instead of killing him, Woo-jin spent years designing the perfect revenge. Mi-do was never a coincidence. She is Dae-soo's own daughter, separated from him as a child, and manipulated into meeting him after his release. Their relationship was orchestrated from the very beginning. Completely broken by the revelation, Dae-soo begs Woo-jin to keep the truth hidden forever. But the damage is already done. His prison was never the room where he spent 15 years. It was the revenge waiting for him outside. The mother. Twin brothers, Elias and Lucas, live in a quiet house deep in the countryside, far from neighbors and surrounded by endless forests. Their peaceful routine is shattered when their mother returns home after undergoing major facial surgery. Her entire face is wrapped in thick white bandages, hiding every expression, and almost immediately she begins acting like a completely different person. She barely speaks to the boys, avoids physical affection, and imposes strange rules that never existed before. Doors must remain closed, curtains stay shut, and disobedience is met with sudden bursts of anger. Elias grows increasingly convinced that the woman inside the house is not his real mother. She forgets familiar details, refuses to answer simple questions about the past, and reacts violently whenever he challenges her. As the days pass, suspicion turns into obsession. Elias and Lucas secretly watch her, searching for proof that an imposter has taken their mother's place. Every small inconsistency strengthens their belief until they become certain that the only way to uncover the truth is to force a confession. They tie the woman to her bed, interrogate her for hours, and subject her to increasingly brutal acts of violence, believing they are rescuing their real mother from whatever happened to her. She desperately insists that she is exactly who she claims to be, but nothing she says can convince them. The horrifying truth is revealed only in the final moments. The woman has been their real mother the entire time. Lucas, however, has not been alive during any of these events. He died before the story began, and Elias, unable to accept the loss, created an imaginary version of his brother to cope with the overwhelming grief. Every conversation, every plan, and every terrible decision came from a fractured mind refusing to face reality. Believing he has defeated an imposter, Elias accidentally kills his own mother and escapes the burning house. Outside, he sees both his mother and Lucas peacefully waiting for him, but neither of them is really there. The ending makes it painfully clear that Elias never escaped the nightmare. He simply replaced one comforting illusion with another. Fake mom. Adelaide Wilson returns to the California beach where she experienced a terrifying childhood incident she has never been able to explain. Decades earlier, she wandered away from her parents inside a seaside amusement park and entered a deserted hall of mirrors. At the end of the maze, she came face to face with someone impossible, another little girl who looked exactly like her. Ever since that night, Adelaide has carried a deep sense of fear she could never put into words. Now married with 2 children, she tries to enjoy a family vacation, but the closer she gets to that same beach, the more convinced she becomes that something terrible is waiting for her. Her anxiety proves justified when, late that night, 4 silent figures appear at the end of the driveway outside their vacation home. They don't move. They simply stand there in the darkness. When they finally step inside, the horrifying truth becomes clear. Each member of the family is confronted by an identical double, dressed in a red jumpsuit and carrying enormous golden scissors. These strangers call themselves the Tethered, mysterious copies who claim they have spent their entire lives trapped beneath America, forced to mirror the lives of the people living above them. As violence erupts across the country and millions of doubles emerge from underground, Adelaide fights desperately to keep her family alive while searching for answers. Their leader, a woman known as Red, seems to know everything about Adelaide's past, speaking as if their lives have always been connected. During the final confrontation beneath the amusement park, the truth finally surfaces through fragmented memories. The real Adelaide was never the woman we've been following. As a little girl, she was dragged into the underground by her own double, who escaped to the surface and took her place. The child who grew up with a family, learned to speak, and built a normal life was actually the tethered all along. Meanwhile, the real Adelaide spent decades trapped below, eventually becoming Red and leading the uprising. In the final moments, Adelaide's young son quietly realizes the horrifying truth, but says nothing, accepting that the woman he calls mom isn't who she always claimed to be. The monster. Tess Marshall arrives in Detroit late at night after booking a rental house for a job interview. Heavy rain pours outside, the neighborhood is almost completely abandoned, and the last thing she expects is to find another guest already inside. Keith, a polite stranger, insists the reservation must have been double booked and offers her a place to stay until morning. Although every instinct tells her to leave, there are no available hotels nearby, forcing her to spend the night with someone she barely knows. At first, the film makes Keith seem like the obvious threat. Every awkward conversation, every closed door, and every strange noise inside the house builds unbearable tension. But everything changes after Tess discovers a hidden passage behind the basement wall. What begins as an ordinary rental quickly transforms into a maze of underground tunnels containing filthy rooms, rusty chains, an old video camera, and signs that horrific crimes once took place there. Before she can escape, she's attacked by a gigantic, deformed woman known only as Mother. From that moment on, survival becomes her only goal. The story then shifts to A.J. Gilbride, the arrogant owner of the property, who visits the house after becoming involved in a career-ending scandal. Instead of being horrified by the underground prison beneath his home, A.J. becomes obsessed with measuring the extra square footage, believing it could increase the property's value. As he explores deeper into the tunnels, the horrifying truth finally comes to light. Decades earlier, the house belonged to Frank, a serial kidnapper who abducted women, imprisoned them underground, and subjected them to years of unimaginable abuse. Children were born in captivity, forced to remain hidden below the house, where generation after generation continued living in complete isolation. Mother isn't the monster who created the nightmare. She's the final victim of it. Everything she does, kidnapping people, forcing them to stay with her, even trying to care for them, comes from the only twisted version of motherhood she has ever known. The film's biggest twist isn't what's hiding underground. It's learning that the real evil was the man who created it all.